Let's proceed to question 4. I'm allowed to be mean and to throw tantrums to my spouse because it happened to me. I was raped and it wasn't my fault. Listen, that is a lie. Is it true that because you did not get the right help at the right time, that it happened maybe when you were 3 years old or 30 years old or 20 years old, and until you got married, you were still wounded? Yes. But does it give you the right to breed and be proud to breed on people? No. But is it true that indeed if you are raped and you have not gotten enough help, that surely you breed on your spouse? Yes, you will for sure. Do you know why? Because of course it is the reality. If I get wounded, I'll have no choice but to breed on people. And if I'm not taken care of, I will start now to produce, my wounds will start to produce pus. If not, it is going now to produce what? Cancer. If not, I'm going now to die and smell for people. So we need to understand that when we marry, or if you are married by someone who was raped, please understand that if they had not gotten help, breeding on you is non-negotiable. Don't fall for a lie that it happened long time ago. No, that is a lie. No matter how a wound is small or big, if not dealt with, the more time, in fact, the more severe. So they have to explain it to you. Now, I'm not saying that don't marry someone who was raped. Please don't. If we did that, you might be the one who will never get married. Don't you think? So in other words, these are people who are capable and who have gone through an incident that they did not choose to, at least not knowingly, or even they ignored the voice that told them, that skirt you are taking in that house, please, you are in danger, run away. But they refused and went ahead. But whether it happened intentionally or unintentionally, it is still our responsibility not to treat people based on their past. Instead, to be concerned about their past and then now treat them as God would have treated them. That's the most important thing. So, young lady, if you are raped, or even young man, if you are raped, it does not give you the guarantee to deny your husband sex or to deny your wife sex, to always be mean to them in the name of, I was raped. This is very important. Whether you are a male, whether you are a female, it is still your responsibility to stay a husband and consistently be a wife. But now in case the wounds cannot allow you to be, now address it, accept the defeat, and tell your spouse, can we seek more advanced help? The one thing I would like to tell people who married people who are raped, this is the truth. You are the best here to your spouse. You need to understand that. They can have counselors, they can have pastors, they can have other supporting systems. But the most person who can hurt or who can delay the healing of your spouse, it is you. Now, don't get me wrong. You who are raped, do not ever use your spouse, your excuse of your refusal to heal. This goes so much to people who like to weaponize their wounds. Every time, that's why I don't heal. It's because you always pressure me. You know, you should let me just be. Until I'm healed, we shall have sex. Listen, while you are healing, you still eat. While you are healing, you still shower. While you are healing, you still do these other activities. So you cannot now refuse to do every other thing that a wife or a husband ought to do in a marriage setup, or a mother or a father, in the name of, I'm sick. Unless indeed it is very severe. But in most cases, you can still heal. You might not give the best sex. You might not work at your best potential, but at least the small you can, give a foot and do the work. Now, question 5. It has 2 sections. I shouldn't learn anything about sex, whether negative or positive, since I was raped. I have met men and women who think like that, but that is wrong. If you are raped, as we said, we run through our 5 senses. So you are raped through the physical sense. In other words, the voice, the smell, the touch that person, whether man or woman, that touched you, it produced some knowledge inside you. So as we had begun in our first question, the only way now to be the contrary, you have to learn the positive knowledge. It is another way to heal. So please stop saying that because I was raped, I shouldn't learn sex positively. Because anything that has to do with sex hurts me. And then you are busy telling pastors and bishops and other people around you to help you pray to get a husband or to get a wife. That is wrong. Because what are you going to do? The same way you want education so that you can go and do your career according to what you covered in your education. It's the same way you ought to cover marriage education. So, and marriage education, there is a subject, a topic that is fundamental that says sex. The other day I asked women that if you were going to marry and then they tell you this man, he cannot erect, but still, this is the one you ought to marry. How many of you willingly who can still go ahead with that marriage? I have asked that question. I'm yet to find a lady who will tell me that they can. They always scream, no, 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 I can never. And I always tell them, since that's what you say, I want you to know that that man who you want him to erect, to have libido, to be wowed by you, whether you are naked or not, whether you have showered or not, you want him to always be turned on for you, then you better ask God to give you the grace to satisfy that urge. Whether you are wounded or not wounded, start the journey of healing and allow God to give you the all capacity you need to heal. This is very important, and we can't go around it. Others, they always instead say, a man shouldn't force me, a woman shouldn't force me to have sex because it wasn't my fault. Listen, you can never weaponize. Because if you weaponize, if your spouse is not as strong, this is not the excuse to your spouse, but if they are not strong enough, they'll go outside to look what they should have. But the problem also, they won't get it. Because sex outside of marriage, as we are saying, whether you did it before marriage or after marriage or in marriage, it can never be like within marriage setup. That is the truth, and we can't change it. So my question that I'm asking to you today is, what are you willing to do to not only just be that person who is mothering and fathering and grandfathering and grandmothering your wounds? Some of you, if you were to illustrate the way you treat the incident of rape or the incident of abuse that happened in your life, this goes both to men and women. It's as if you've bought a big bed for them. That is your own. You've bought perfumes. You pamper them. This is what one guy said as we conclude, that sometimes some marriages, they're like a person who was wounded or they have been broken their leg. And then they live like that for many years. And then when you ask them, do you know if you went and they did surgery for your leg, you can start to walk well without ripping? Most of these people who have such an incident, they'll tell you, no. We don't want to be operated. We are okay. After all, we've been like this for years. Have you seen something familiar like that? You tell man, can you learn to bring flowers to your wife? No, 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 for us, we are okay. It's not that I love her. I don't have to. It's been 20 years. Listen, it might have been 20 years of reaping. So your marriage is not functioning in its own full capacity. You are not working in the whole capacity. You can relate to someone who has one eye. They are told, please, can we do operation? You start to see with two eyes. And then they're like, no, I have adapted to use one eye and I'm okay. Because they don't want to go through the journey and through the surgery of everything being torn apart and then assembled again and throw away what is not necessary. Let me ask you, young man and young woman who was raped. Are you treating your wounds like that? Even in every other incident that might have happened to each one of you, even if it is not rape, are you still mothering? Am I saying you can't go through the process of grieving and mourning? No, you can. But if it takes you decades and it starts to affect your education, your business, your ministry, your marriage, your children, your parenthood, then I don't think that is grieving anymore. You are mothering these things. As you plan to get wedded if you haven't, as you plan to get married if you haven't, you ought to start to seek help. If you have just started a relationship, put these things on the first list of priority that you ought to share with your spouse so that they know how do they relate with you. Otherwise, they are going to be the punching machine. They are going to receive the punishment of what the other person did, and yet they weren't there. And that won't be right, that won't be fair, and that will be hatred, not love.